Hi, and welcome to Jules Voto's Photo Focus. The focus in this video is on why I like using manual focus lenses on mirrorless cameras. Now, mirrorless cameras have given new life to millions of vintage manual focus lenses from just about every company that ever produced lenses for 35mm cameras. The reason manual focus lenses can be adapted to mirrorless cameras is because of the short flange distance of mirrorless cameras. Flange distance is the distance from the digital sensor to the lens mount, or in the case of film cameras, from the film to the lens mount. Since mirrorless cameras have no mirror, the distance, the flange distance, is much shorter than in DSLRs or film SLRs, which need room for the mirror. Since vintage manual focus lenses were designed for use on cameras with a mirror, in order for them to focus the full range from close-up to infinity on a mirrorless camera, you need an adapter to position the lens the same distance from the sensor that it would be in a DSLR. So these adapters are basically a hollow tube, no optics involved, that position the lens that proper distance. They mount to the mirrorless camera at one end and your vintage manual focus lens to the other. Mirrorless camera manufacturers such as Canon and Nikon make adapters to use their own non-mirrorless lenses. And there are several third-party companies that make adapters to use a bunch of different mounts, such as Canon FD or FL, M42 screw thread, Minolta bayonet mount, Leica M mount, and a bunch of others. There are literally many thousands of different lenses that can be used. Now, I have used Nikon AI and AIS manual focus lenses on my DSLRs, but focusing is difficult, especially with wide-angle lenses. The focusing screens of DSLRs were not designed for manual focusing. The electronic rangefinder helps, but it's not perfect. On the other hand, with mirrorless cameras, you have the ability to zoom in to the selected focus point, and you also have focus peaking. And those things make focusing manually on a mirrorless camera much easier. Another big advantage of using manual focus lenses on mirrorless cameras is the availability of in-body image stabilization. You have image stabilization with lenses that are decades old, something that wasn't even imagined when these lenses were designed. Since interchangeable lens, full-frame, mirrorless cameras are less than 10 years old, the lenses for them are relatively new designs. Also, because of that short flange distance and wider lens mount, lens designers have more freedom with lens design. Canon, Nikon, Sony, and other mirrorless lenses are mostly all highly rated. So while vintage manual focus lenses may not be as sharp or as well corrected, and of course they don't autofocus, but they do have some advantages over mirrorless lenses. You can pick up these lenses for a lot less money. You can find 50mm 1.8 manual focus lenses for under $50, while Nikon's 50mm 1.8 mirrorless lens sells for $600. That gives you the ability to try many different lenses, many different focal lengths. Also, vintage manual focus lenses have aperture rings, which allows you to use them on film cameras of the same manufacturer. For example, Canon lenses, Canon FL or FD lenses can be used on the Canon F1 or FTB. Pentax lenses can be used on the Pentax Spotmatic, as well as adapted to the mirrorless cameras. Now, mirrorless lenses cannot be used on film cameras. They also have depth of field markings, which allows you to pre-focus the lens and see, for a given aperture, what the approximate depth of field will be. This works great for street photography, especially with wide-angle lenses. You just raise the camera up to your eye and shoot. You also could shoot from the hip. And most mirrorless cameras also have a silent mode, so you can really be unobtrusive. A great many of these vintage manual focus lenses are of all metal construction. They are beautifully made, and as has been proven, they will last for decades. Now, with respect to Nikon vintage manual focus lenses, a good many of their lenses, from 20mm up to 200mm, including a few zooms, take the same 52mm size filters. And if you've priced filters lately, that's a nice advantage. Now, for some subjects, manual focus can work as well or even better than autofocus. Street photography, as I mentioned earlier, landscape photography, macro photography, where manual focus is better, studio type portraits, architectural photography, and I'm sure you could think of some others. Also, with auto everything cameras, we tend to shoot too fast. Manual focus lenses force you to slow down and think. Now, of course, manual focus lenses aren't best for action. Birds in flight, active children, sports, autofocus will work better. Now, another thing with these old vintage lenses, especially those made before multi-coating, is the images they produce have a vintage look, especially when shot at or near maximum aperture. They flare more easily, they're lower contrast, and they just give your photos a dreamy look. They could work great for portraits. Now, a couple of lenses that give you that look that I own are the Canon 55mm 1.2 FL lens and Nikon's 58mm non-AI 1.4. There are many others. So in conclusion, if you don't already have an adapter for your mirrorless camera, why not pick up an inexpensive one and experiment with a vintage lens or two? You can find many good ones for well under $100. You may find yourself addicted to old glass. My next video will be about 3 of my favorite vintage manual focus lenses. So thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and tap that bell so you'll be alerted when I publish a new video. I'll be publishing new videos every Wednesday morning. If you didn't like it, I'd like to know that too. Please leave a comment below. And if you have any questions, let me know. I would be happy to answer your questions. So until next time.